Hey guys, it's your best boxing friends. I'm Kelsey, this is Rachel. Teddy Atlas, beloved former trainer and TV analyst for ESPN, was on a podcast. And basically he said that instead of boxing being run the way it is, where there are multiple promotional bodies, etc., all making fights, it would be better if boxing became more like the UFC, where you have one main entity headed by one person, Dana White, to ensure that all the fights in boxing that we want to see get made. What do you think about that Atlas special? And what do you think about my new hair? My accidental haircut. We'll get to the accidental haircut later. But first, tell me about TA. I call him TA because we're close. He doesn't know that. Don't tell him.
So, I do, on one hand, I kind of, get that because we do know that boxing is kind of a mess because of all the interested parties that you have between promotional companies, the fighter, trainers, managers, TV outlets. It's a lot of different people to that all want to make sure they're getting their own.
Yeah, they've got to get theirs.
So yeah, I get that, and sometimes we don't get things for a long or ever because these two people just don't work together, which is kind of ridiculous. So I get that. But I also think, who would that be? And that's a lot of power for one person to leave them in charge of making, all the fights. Do they have something that balances out, the choices they make to keep them in check, to make, the ethical choices when you're making fights, so that they're not slighting certain fighters and things like that? Because I would imagine that it's easy to have relationships with different people and kind of, I'll do this for you, you do this for me, and then you're doing special things for some people and not others. It seems like that would be really easy to do with a single person in charge.
My biggest problem with Teddy Atlas's suggestion is that, one, I think it's not true that all the UFC fights that people want to see are made. Mm-hmm. But two, and the biggest reason I disagree, and I prefer the model that we have, is because in boxing, the fighters make a lot more money. At least the ones at the very top make the lion's share of the money in comparison to UFC. And that, you can look at the pay-per-view buys of big fights with Conor McGregor and look at similar pay-per-view numbers from big fights with Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather. Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather got a lot more of that total revenue. And I think it's important for the person doing all the stuff with their body in the ring as a boxer. And so I like that boxers have a lot more visibility into the total revenue share and also have that ability to say, hey, I'm the product. I'm the person that actually sacrifices my life. Because fighters can die in the ring, and we all know that fighters often have issues just like NFL people down the line. So I do think that while it kind of makes an every man for himself type situation, I think overall that's probably better than what we have in the UFC. Because look at guys like Chuck Liddell or Tito Ortiz. They didn't make a whole lot of money, and they drove that company, the UFC, as it came up. And so I know that Conor McGregor doesn't pay a lot. They're paying. I'm not saying they're not paying guys. I'm saying the percentage of the total revenue from UFC pay-per-views and all this stuff they make, in comparison, if they were in boxing, they would make a lot more money. And I think that that's a better model because
the fighters should get most of the money.
Who are we paying the money to see? Not Dana White, not the UFC. We're paying to see the fighters and fights. Yeah. And so I don't know. I know that Oscar De La Hoya tried to jump into the MMA pay-per-view scene with Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell. Didn't go really well. Oscar doesn't know anything about MMA, so that was kind of silly. But it is an interesting thing, and maybe there's potential, as much as I love UFC, for at least them to maybe rethink some of their the way they do their business. Now, they've been really successful. They're super popular, so I could be totally wrong about that. They could be doing great, but I do know that for me, the most important thing is the fighter, and I want the fighter to get as much money as possible because they're the ones that risk their life.
I wonder if the better option would be to look at what boxing already currently does and see, is there something instead of saying, oh, we're going to put one person in charge of making all fights, maybe if we had one governing body that helped to clean up some of the conflict of interest and different things going on, because I don't know, there's just some instances where you have all these people that are trying to make a fight for a fighter, and some of those people don't need to be involved in that decision. Like it doesn't make sense for them to be involved, because they should be focused on their fighter and not trying to do other things that only serve their needs. And so I wonder if maybe just a board that oversaw like boxing for a country or globally might be a better option than going to like another extreme. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because that is like a good idea. You think like, oh, I want to add this governing body or these people that could do this. And in reality, that's exactly why the sanctioning organizations like the WBC, IDF, all those came about with good intentions. I'm not knocking it. It is a good intention, a good idea. But we've seen in life that things kind of, we'll leave that for another time about the sanctioning organizations. But things don't always work out the way.
No, it would have to be something that was like, and because boxing is global, I would think that it would need to be something global and just a single organization.
Because UFC doesn't have to deal with any of the sanctioning organizations, right? They do their own rankings, do their own championships. Here's what's interesting.
So I would like that, actually. Just get rid of the current sanctioning bodies, have one, and then you just have one champion for every weight class. And
would you like to know a funny UFC fact that I recently
Sure.
Did you know that despite them doing their own rankings and doing their own championship belts all in-house, they also do fights for interim championships, like they're the WBA? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, UFC. Just make it for the number one contender. You don't need interim championships. And the mental, like, gymnastics that you do to, like, support that, I think is stupid. Like, we don't need those. They clutter up boxing. I cannot believe you would have a clean slate and you would introduce that into your own sport. But, hey, you're in charge of that, not me. I'm in charge of this.
Yeah. And you know what they're in charge of?
What's that, Rachel? Liking,
commenting, and subscribing to Real Talk with Kelsey and Rachel.
You know, today and this week, actually, we're going to send it this week. This week only, liking, commenting, and subscribing is absolutely free. If you don't like Real Talk with, what's our names? Real Talk with Kelsey and Rachel, we will give you your money back. Oh, okay, my story. So I was outside doing my hair, and I cut my own hair because I'm po. I realized recently I don't have the money to be buying haircuts for $20 or whatever. And so I was like, whatever, I'm going to get the clippers. Because I used to do it when I was a kid. Anyway, I'm doing it now, and I was doing it. And I did a good job, and I got a good $3 ring around. It's pretty nice even. And then I did these little things, and I was like, oh, that looks pretty good. Oh, I missed a spot up here. And I just went up with the one. And it was just like, so that means I had to go full, Rachel said, sort of like Tyson Fury.
So you think he looks like a little bit like one of the ways we've seen Tyson Fury look?
I'm a fighting man!
Short hair.
Yeah, so maybe I'll grow out the full whole Fury beard and just go all in on it. I do love Tyson Fury. So we'll see. Anyway, I wanted to share that story with you. And hey, we love you. Thanks for watching. Stay real. Pack that steel.
What the?
Wait, no, that's what Tupac said. You don't want to. You don't have to carry guns around.
Are guns? I guess they're made out of steel.
Some of them are. Tupac. This is a different time back then.
He just wanted to rhyme.
Yeah, Tupac is a rhymer. Actually, he's what they call a rapper.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about like rapping things.
Okay.
So
I
think it's more like a
rapping on a drum.
yeah, like